Welcome to Tech y Vida with Dr. J, where life and technology intersect. Hi and welcome everyone to Tech y Vida. I will say it's raining in Los Angeles today, and as I'm trying to have this conversation, I actually was coming to my office space where I do the podcast, and I will share with you my house. What I did recently is I replaced all of my doorknobs with smart doorknobs that require your fingerprint, right? Unfortunately, with the rain, I found myself being frustrated because it's wet and it wasn't opening, so I was able to use my mobile device. But I was looking at that, I was reflecting, like, what could we do or develop to really not allow that to happen? Like, why would I have to carry my phone? And the reason I, wanted to start off with that is because I woke up really early, and it was around 3, 4 in the morning, and it was raining, and I was just like, I didn't have my phone on me, and I couldn't get into the house or into my office space. So fortunately, I was able to fix that problem. But it's something that, again, the beauty about technology is leveraging all this innovation, and at the same time, it comes with this cons. In this case, it was the rain wasn't playing in our favor. I will say I am a big fan of rain. I love it. I love to just be inside and warm and enjoy this weather, especially in LA where we don't get much rain, and it's good that we're having it right now. With that said, I will start today, trying to catch us up on some key tech updates, life updates, and I am going to be really selective with what I will be talking about today, understanding that, politics and everything that's happening in this great country has definitely had an impact. And the news, we all see the news and we see what's happening. Unfortunately, it's something that we're going to have to navigate through. And I am hopeful. I am hopeful that things are going to get better in the future. Unfortunately, we have to go through this tough time with this current change in leadership that's happening. With that said, we all saw all that happened over the week. And if you didn't, the biggest news that I've been really following is related to Tesla and how the stock has been going downwards with all that's happening and the vulnerability. And we talked briefly about it last time, but I will say, as a person that used to be a big fan, it's really sad and unfortunate to see such a potential, promising future that the product had go in this direction. I was hopeful that it would get better, and I was one of the folks that was really investing and putting effort into the product, and unfortunately, here we are. It takes just a person to really make things go south, and it really has an impact, not only in terms of the financial component, but for people that drive them, it makes you feel unsafe and uncomfortable, understanding the perception or the perspective of people and this particular brand vehicle and the person that is managing the brand. So that in that conversation, I will say and share that it's been something that since the inauguration day has really had an impact on a lot of people that leverage the vehicle. I know that there's been a lot of noise coming out of the product and whatnot, but again, it's something that we're going to have to deal with. And I've seen a lot of people let go of their Tesla vehicles and move on. It's just, trying to see what's out there in the market. And when it comes to technology, I think there's a lot of great competition out there in terms of vehicles. I will say something to look out in case you're an electric vehicle. You could go and look at the market. At the same time, though, it's scary because we are also hearing about this whole tariff, which we all know it's a tax. We need to just stop sugarcoating it, or this tariff war, trade war that we want to call it, and the potential implications that it will have in technology and in all of us in life. So again, I'm trying to stay away from all this heavy topic. I'm trying to keep it light and bright with all that's happening. And I was actually looking into some news that were really interesting. I don't know if people are familiar with Skype. Skype is been around for over 20 years. It's owned by Microsoft. They've officially decided to shut it down after I think it's 21 years now. And that product, I remember way back when I saw Skype, people were adopting it and it was going through its phases. And then we had different products come in. We could talk about Zoom, which has dominated the market, and then Microsoft Teams. You have other products that rival like Slack. But the reality is, when I was looking at this, I was like, wow, I'm just surprised it took Microsoft this long to let go of Skype, right? They had Microsoft Teams, and I will be honest, I like Microsoft Teams. It's a great product. For all you that are using it, it's only getting better and better, especially when it comes to video calls. I will openly say that is way better to me than Slack. Slack has a lot of, and this is my experience, has a lot of downsides to it. Maybe it'll get better, but I know everyone has their perspective and their bias, and I could have a conversation about Slack and Microsoft. I would also share on that topic, and as I'm talking about this, I remember we had a market research review about this technology, and we were looking into Slack. We had a new leader or new CEO come in, and they were really interested in bringing in Slack to our industry. And in this time, we had Microsoft, and we were really strategic and smart about how we did deployments and releases for products. And with Microsoft, we had Microsoft Teams, and it was relatively not infant, but it was not as mature in terms of a product when it comes to development, but it was becoming better and better. And when this new leader came in, they were like, Jesus, can you look into the product? And I want to deploy it. I immediately took a step back and I asked, I always ask, why are we trying to do something? Is there a problem that we're trying to solve? Typically that's how I tend to approach things. And the reason why is because we had a base of folks that were either personnel, and it was over, I forgot, it was like 20,000 people. And I was immediately thinking about change. And tied to that, we had customers that were already used to it. So I was thinking about change management and the end-to-end implications of adopting a new solution without truly doing any market research or research as to why we were trying to do this. Long story short, we were able to bring in this leader and get them to leverage Microsoft Teams. And they realized that the product was good, that Microsoft Teams did and delivered on items that Slack had. The difference here was education or awareness. They were not as aware or versed in Teams. And that's part of my mantra, right? We need to start really using the tool to understand the tool. And some of us might not have that, but we should always have team members that are going to be able to, be out there, be curious, be innovative, be creative, and leverage these solutions and come back with ideas, which is why I tend to incorporate in every engagement or session, like some quick sessions of innovation where we could all have a conversation to really talk about what's out there, because we're human beings. We're only going to know as much, and not to bring in AI into all of this, but that's just the reality of all of this. Now, in the topic of AI, I will say, as I was thinking about, and, as I was starting today's conversation, I was really looking into something that recently happened with AI and the current administration and the race to AI dominance. We know the US was or has been dominant with companies like OpenAI, and the other one is Gemini through Google. We have Microsoft Copilot. There's just so many. And we saw that DeepSeek and these more and more companies are now coming out that are having an impact, an effect, but it's competition at the end of the day that has really made these companies think and reflect as to how they could become better. With that being said and done, OpenAI and Google, I know, were looking or checking with the government on if it could allow them to train AI contents that they don't own. And this is copyrighted material. In essence, one of the things that this article was talking about was OpenAI and Google argued that applying fairness or fair use protections to AI is a matter of national security. And that is related to like their competition with companies like DeepSeek, which could really impact innovation. So it's more of those boundaries and limitations to innovation that could affect these companies and their race to be dominant with AI. I will say that, they made some really profounding remarks, like, forfeiting the race if we don't allow this to happen, and really competing with other countries like China and their DeepSeek. And by the way, tied to DeepSeek, I was reading an article about DeepSeek and how the Chinese government has became so protective of that product that they no longer allow their engineers to leave the country, which is really scary. I think about that, and I think about our own country, and I know that we have people that want to control human beings and, want them to overwork or work hundreds of hours a week. I hope we don't get to that space and place, but it's something that we need to be really careful about when it comes to these competitive items that are happening around the world, especially with the governments now getting too involved in the private sector and at the same time being mindful of human rights. There's other companies like Anthropic and their AI chatbot Claude that also had a proposal submitted to really talk about this copyright privacy or patent policies that impede appropriate access to data that is necessary for training these leading models. I will say where I often get cautious tied to this conversation, I see where they could come up and have these arguments, but I also could see the negative or the cons, right? There's always plus and deltas to this. It's the fact that they are asking to get access to information that is not publicly available. And that's really where I take a step back, and I will say I do tend to believe in privacy, and I do tend to believe in making sure that we don't we don't submit too much to these companies. They are private companies or corporations at the end of the day. They often have their own interests that come first. And I understand where the competitive nature comes from, but it's also thinking about at the receiving end or at the end, it's people's information and or ownership of a lot of this stuff. And that's where you have to be really careful, strategic, and hopefully there's conversation and dialogue tied to that. And we don't just have an administration that just submits and gives in. But it's looking like that. I mean, look at crypto. I always have been in this gray space with crypto. And I know a lot of people, they keep pushing and pushing. I will say, I don't think crypto is the future. That is my personal belief. I believe that we will start to see that unfold into the future, especially as we're talking about currency, fiat, etc., related to this market and industry. Now, with all that, there's another topic that came up with AI recently, and that was censorship. On one side, we know that censorship is happening. On the other side, we had, I think it was a Republican chairman of the House Judiciary Committee who had an investigation with big tech firms about whether the federal government had pressured them into using artificial intelligence. And this is to censor lawful speech. And I like how they use lawful speech, right? I don't want to get into censorship, but we are seeing in front of us censorship happen with this current administration. We're seeing a lot of misinformation come out, and we're seeing the effects of it. It was a matter of time before we really got to see the reality of all that's happening out there, but they are trying to like get evidence as to whether the previous administration had put pressure on these companies to really advance equity and stop algorithmic discrimination. I find it interesting that we're having these conversations because we're now really in this space of this division or divisiveness where it's really making one group against the other. And I will also say that as these models or these Gen AI models are more and more advancing, it is really critical that there is some level of oversight to make sure that there is some advocacy and or I don't, fairness for lack of a better word that could support everyone within this country, especially being the United States of America. We should be advancing and making sure that all this technology and innovation has at the forefront the interest of everyone. That's probably a big ask, but I always think about that. And with understanding that, we don't have, or we can only control ourselves and we can only control what's in front of us. We often, and for me, it's always advocating for digital literacy, AI literacy, making sure that folks out there are really leveraging these solutions to continue to improve and really have them in consideration when it comes to mitigating the production of harmful and biased outputs. That's just the reality. It is a technology solution, and the algorithm, the training data set, the models, etc. We really need to do our best to make sure that we contribute to this and contribute to innovation as people in this spectrum that we're trying to leverage technology. Now, again, it's been some time. I don't want to get too in depth with all that's happening, but those are some of the big things that really caught my attention. Not to say that those are the only things, because there's a lot. It's just really for me to take a step back and try to limit what's happening with everything out there, with politics, with the lack or misinformation from several fronts. That's something I've been repeating in each session or in each episode. But I also want to give technology it's good. And one thing that I will say I appreciate about technology is that through all of this chaos and all of this noise, technology has been an avenue for me. It's when I think about it, even doing this podcast, it's been an avenue to release and let go and really bring up things that are of interest to me. And at the same time, kind of take a step back and reflect on everything happening, process, prepare, and look into the future and be optimistic with all that's going on again in front of us. I do want to make sure, and I think we all know this, that technology has been an avenue for us to be able to engage, support, and be there for one another. While at the same time, I do understand that, there is some level of fear going on with how we leverage technology and what we put out there and how it could really have possible implications or impact into the future. What I will say is, this country was built on freedom of speech. And with that being said and done, we as human beings, and again, this is just probably the naive side of me. I think everyone has a good inside of them, is making sure that what we do and how we do is critically thought out, and that we are being considerate and mindful in anything and everything that we do. I know there's times of frustrations and whatnot, but technology to me is a avenue that helps. And again, looking at it from the good, right, to really get through these difficult times and share out and engage and have a conversation about our different perspectives. We will always have different perspectives. We will always have some difference in opinions, but being respectful, being able to have a dialogue is really critical, especially for me. It's when, talking about technology in life. You know, I travel often, and I will say that having dialogue and conversation has always been something for me, talking and engaging folks, getting to know and talk. So, all in all, I want to make sure that we all keep, really being positive or staying positive as best as we can. And again, I love tech news. I love life. I really enjoy a lot that's out there. It makes me smile seeing technology from a positive perspective. And, there's a lot of uplifting stories that are possible thanks to technology. And, I won't go into details, but there was a lot tied to, like, whether it's the Magic Eye, the Apple Watches, or the bioelectric breakthroughs. I will say that these stories often ground me, that technology isn't just about the next big gadget. It's really about improving lives and bringing that level of joy. With that, folks, it is a wrap for this week's episode of Tech y Vida with Dr. J. We covered a lot, and I really talked or ranted for the most time on things that are having an impact. I will say for the next episode, I actually already have some ideas. I was thinking about these new solutions coming out and actually doing this in real time, a recording while I'm, really going through that new robotic solution that came out, and having the podcast to reflect on my experience there. That's one thing that I will say is something that I'm thinking a lot about, and I might have it either in this episode coming up or the next one. But I will let everyone know, technology is shaping our world every day. And as always, we'll be here to break it all down for you. Until next time, keep innovating, stay curious, and embrace the tech that makes life amazing. Thank you, everyone. Stay safe.